So it's Joseph Hallett here with Carrie Kohan on Friday the 1st of September 2023, and we're doing our first interview on what?
Well, we have a few things to talk about, that's for sure. Okay. Are you getting feedback there?
I think okay.
This is kind of funny because this is one of the things that we want to talk about was all the interruptions that we've been going through since we met, right? Yeah. So I ended up in Portugal, and I went to the palace, Estoril Palace. And as soon as I walked in, their system was down. They couldn't register me. They had to do it by hand. And then it went from there. Everything electrical was fine. My phone wouldn't hold the charge. The computer wasn't working. You know, that's why we haven't had videos up. It's just been a nightmare electronically. Our Patreon account was, in essence, taken down. We started with lots of people promoting and supporting us, and all of a sudden we went to 0 Patreon members. And I was told that the bank account information wasn't sufficient enough, which doesn't make any sense because it's been a bank that I've used for a very long time, and my company's in it. It's all registered, it's all legal, but it was taken down. So that's what I'm working on today, is working on Patreon, getting our members back on board. So I'm in a hotel room here back in Portugal, and we're working very hard, you and I, to get the news out there. We do need to talk about Charlie Ward, because we haven't gone into that yet. You know, what both of us experienced, and he used the same tactics on you that he used on me, and he put it in writing. And so I'd love to be able to share the emails that he sent, because they're pretty telling, you know. And also, what was the other thing? Oh, the Estoril Palace. There was something really cool that happened there. I tell you, it was really interesting. So,
What was it? Was it you found the entrance to the tunnel?
Well, there were lots of things. You mentioned that there were tunnels there, right? So, in talking with the manager when I arrived, I said, there seems to be a lot of coded history here. And he was like, yeah, I guess so, but no, it's really just a normal hotel. And I was thinking, yeah, right. This is not a normal hotel, right? It's everywhere you look, there's codes, there's Knights Templar images and symbolisms, right? So yeah, it's a very interesting place. But when I was there, you mentioned the tunnels, so I talked to the manager about that, and he said, oh, well, let me show you some things here. So he brought me, you know, the columns, the big long columns that create...
Well, it's a cross of 68 columns over exactly 3,000 square meters.
Wow. So what's the significance of that?
Well, 3,000 is the Trinity, 3 is the Trinity.
Okay.
Right, and 68 is a very special number. Like Queen Elizabeth II was stripped of all of her titles 68 days before Coronation Day by the man who had no job at the time, but he then became the Archbishop of Milan and Pope Paul VI. And he then stripped all of the popes of all of their crowns, so they were no longer princes of Europe.
What year was that?
Absolutely major. That was, well, the coronation was 1953, so she was stripped of all of her titles. I think it was the 26th of March, 1953. The coronation was on the 2nd of June, 1953, and it's not called Queen Elizabeth's coronation. It's called Coronation Day because it was the coronation of Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars and not Elizabeth. And when Elizabeth was in the carriage, she's sitting on the right-hand side of the carriage and waving with her left hand, which is inside, not a right hand outside, but left hand inside. And left hand refers to left-handed marriage, which means morganatic, which means illegitimate. So Queen Elizabeth was agreeing by waving with her left hand at a coronation that she was illegitimate in a morganatic marriage, which would mean that Prince Philip was more the king. and Prince Philip was the agent for Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars for the UK and Europe, working for the Jesuits and the Vatican. So the whole thing, the whole coronation of Elizabeth was a Vatican ceremony.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate.
Yeah.
Could they not have just been using their left hand?
Why would you wave to people with your inside hand?
That's true. If I'm looking out the window, I would be using the hand that's closest to the window. I wouldn't be waving this way out to the window, would I? No, that's true. Yeah.
And, whenever Elizabeth,
try it.
Yeah, whenever Elizabeth was in the limousine going through a procession, which was not a coronation, and waving, she would wave with the right hand, right, and the window side.
Okay.
Right?
And what was the other term you used? The weaponization of
Quiet Wars.
Secret weapons of quiet wars. What's that about?
Silent Weapons for Quiet Wars.
Okay, what's that?
It was started in 1953, and they were saying it was its 25th anniversary. So it started actually in coronation year 1953, and it was discovered 25 years later in what's that, 1978. And it is basically a coagulation of all the Jesuit methods of taking over the world and creating a world with no values and stealing all the sovereignty of the people and the sovereignty of the nations and all of the land of the nations and all of the crowns of the nations, all the nations, and ending up owning the world in exchange for producing a world with no values. And no values is exemplified by transgender, or the, whatever it's called, JBTQP thing, and
everything that's going on in this world, the madness.
Going on now, it's all about tattoos. People don't go to church, they get a tattoo. So that's all about no values. So we're living in a world with no values.
It's the kitty litter boxes in the classrooms, right?
Yeah. And
because the children identify as cats now.
Yeah, all lampposts. Mm-hmm. Anything they want. So that's all about no values. So that's showing that the Jesuits have succeeded in destroying the British monarchy, and Prince Charles is an absolute Jesuit. He is working very hard to create a world with no values, to hand over the monarchy and strip everyone of their sovereignty and hand over the monarchy to the Jesuits and the Catholic Church.
Right. So we'll have no land, but we'll be happy.
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah, and that happiness is done through pharmaceutical drugs. And fake news, like the Lahaina fires, with a miraculous rebuild by developers working for charity who had nothing to do with it at the beginning.
I know. So before we go into the fires, let's go back to the tunnels, okay? Because I want to stay with that.
In Stroy.
Yeah, okay, the Stroy Palace. So I met with the manager, and he said, oh, let me show you this. So he showed me all along those columns, there are little trapdoors. And he said those are all access to the well system, the water system that goes into the fountains. But he said this one down here at the very end of the column, there is almost a fake looking columns with a beautiful cap on it, and it just looks like a Roman, temple. And so just in front of it is this huge grate, and it goes down 15 feet at least, 15, 20 feet. It has a ladder that goes down. I was so tempted to get into there, I tell you, and lift it up and go down. But he was saying that when he was a young boy, he remembered that the Stroy Palace was owned privately. It was a family, many generations that owned the palace.
Up until 1974.
Right.
So the woman there was still wearing massive crinoline dresses from the 1700s. She was still fully dressed as an aristocrat from 200 years prior.
Wow.
The revolution came, she scarpered, and all the locals came in and took everything out of the palace.
Wow. So in 1974.
Yeah, and I went into someone's house, and they had a couch, a sofa from inside the palace, and it was just wood, and it was one piece of carved wood. The whole couch was one piece of wood, beautifully carved and absolutely smooth in all these vine-like patterns. It's fantastic.
Wow.
Very wealthy.
Yeah. Well, he was saying that this family, many generations lived there, and then when it was taken over, well, it sat abandoned for a very long time, he said, right? And then some company came in and decided to renovate it. And when they did, he was there at the time when all the workers were going down below, and they said that they did find tunnels there, but they led nowhere, supposedly. So they just led to the fountains. And
I met a, I went to Stoy and I met some people, and I sat down to dinner, and there was like 12 people at the dinner, and I just happened to be at the head of the table. So there was like 13 people at the dinner. It was like a Last Supper
13.
kind of,
Yep.
except at the narrow end of the table. And there's a guy there who's saying that his father was a bodybuilder, and he's still alive, and he went down those tunnels when he was about 9 years old. So that would have been about 1959. And they go to Consuelo, which means conception, and then go to just northeast of Faro on the coast.
Wow.
So they're actually 10 kilometers long, and inside the tunnel was a whole lot of Roman artifacts like spears and shields, all sorts of stuff in there, and some religious artifacts. So it was actually used, and it was used for initiations of Roman emperors back in the day.
Okay, so I'm debating whether to tell this or not. Should I tell this, yes or no? Yeah, okay. So I won't name the name, but
Yeah.
I had a meeting since coming back from Stoy and the palace. And this person I've known for a very long time, and I kind of suspected that they were part of the Knights Templars slash, what do you call them? Masons, there it is. Okay, so I think he's part of the Masons. But I think some Masons are good. I may be naive. You may call me naive.
No. There's some good in all of those organizations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I truly believe he's good. And we have had long conversations about Anne Boleyn and about the Knights Templar and about the cave, because he had friends within the Knights Templar organization locally in Portugal. And they tried to look in to see, is that your phone or mine?
Yours.
No, it's someone out in the hall. Okay, so he tried to look in to see, the history of the cave and how it progressed all the way to you. So I guess there is a lot of information out there, but not able to speak about it, right? So anyways, he didn't tell me, but I had a feeling when I was at Stoy Palace, there was something there. There were hidden walls, and then it wasn't until later I came out, I went, wait a minute, the third floor is the upper floor, but there is actually a floor above that on the palace. Yeah. But no one has access to that, right? I think that third floor is used, or fourth floor is used for something. Whether it's Masons gathering, or Templars or something. It just felt, I don't know, there was something there. It felt like group gathering.
The whole palace is in a 6-5 pattern, which means macrocosm, microcosm. And there is a tower. I told you to go up those stairs in that tower, and then you can see the roof, and you can see the roof's in a 6-5 pattern.
Right.
And then when you get to look at the view there, it's one of the best views you'll ever see. Did you see it at sunset?
It's beautiful.
It's just fantastic. And, what I wrote in The Hidden King of England, Volume 5, was that Estoy Palace was renovated initially in the mid-1800s by the artist prince, King Dom Ferdinand II of Portugal, who was married to Queen Maria II of Portugal, and he was Queen Victoria's first cousin. He was the one that brought Prince Marcos Manuel out from the Isle of Wight to Lisbon, right? And then for doing that, he got to marry Queen Maria II of Portugal, and he renovated Pena Castle in Sintra outside Lisbon, and in the same style, using the same artisans, he did Estoy Palace, right? And Estoy Palace is known as the End Times Palace. So we're in the end now. The end times started, clicked over, and 2014, and then every 3 years it's doing a major thing like 2017, 2020, 2023. And what they said is that part of the legend is that there would be no teaspoons in Destroy Palace until the end times. So I went there initially in November 2013, and there were no teaspoons. There were big spoons, almost dessert spoons that you got with your coffee. And now they're giving you teaspoons. So that means the end times has begun. So the whole place has been done up by King Don Ferdinand II of Portugal, and he was really into the esoteric arts, big time. Plus, he was Sir Walter Raleigh's #1 fan, and he had one of 2 collections of Raleigh's travel log manuals of his ships, right, which he kept in Penny Castle, which was a kilometre from where I lived. It's a special place, and it's 800 yards west of that is Milroo Palace, Milroo, which has got a Roman-style villa there with hot baths and lukewarm baths and cold baths, but the plan of it is actually the same as Luxor, right? And that's where Jesus lived. Apparently, one of the Jesus lived. Well, both of them lived there for a while, for about 3 years. They built it, and at that time, it had a harbour coming right up to it, up to the Marseille Bridge. And what's happened is every 400 years or so, you get these massive earthquakes in Portugal, absolutely massive. Like the last one was 1755 in Lisbon, and you'd get 20 metre difference in the land right next to each other. Crack, right? So what happens? It broke all the gas pipes, and the whole of Lisbon caught fire. Everyone moved out of Lisbon, and then they rebuilt it in the Pambolino architecture, which was reinforced. So what's happened with Milroo is it used to be at sea level, and it used to be close to the sea, and it used to be a harbour, right? And now it is 40 metres above sea level,
easily,
at least, and it's 4 kilometres, actually 6 kilometres from the coast. And when you get down to the coast of Faro, you get to a fishing village, and it's inland. And then you go for another 2 kilometres, you get to another fishing village, and it's inland. And then you get to another fishing village, and it's surrounded by these muddy sand that's got air bubbles in it, and crabs and stuff, and little islands. And Faro is one of the few places in the world where the land is actually growing. It's actually continually growing outwards. So it's quite a unique location. And in saying that, the tunnel at Conceal, which means conception, it actually used to be the coast.
Right.
Right. So you can say conception, conception, that might have actually been in 33 AD. That might have actually been where the coast was.
Wow.
Right. Where things.
Well, yeah, my property was, I'd say 100 meters from the coast. And it was all filled with seashells. Everywhere you look, the land was full of seashells. It was obvious that was underwater at one point, but boom, up it came.
Yeah. And there's some weird effects, like just next to Stoy, 800 yards or 700 royal yards is Milroo, and then there's a 12-kilometre walk called Pilgrim's Walk to Lulay, which is the most Marian town in the world, and that's got 3 major springs in it. And the river from those 3 major springs, it's now 3 major swimming pools, like 2 Olympic pools with big diving board and stuff. But the river there, if you see it at the right time of the year, it's all covered in flowers and that. But it used to be islands, right? The river, that was actually the harbour, and you can see where the islands were. So you can imagine sailing up there. And if you look out to the sea, instead of being eye level, it just appears to be really high. It's kind of a weird scenario. It's a similar scenario to Stoney Beach on the east coast of Scotland. It's got that same effect of a high sea. Yeah, so magical place.
So when I was at Astoy, they served me a big soup spoon, right? That was the teaspoon, and I had soup, and that was fine. Use the big soup spoon, but then I had what was it now? Mushroom risotto, and they gave me a fork for that. Well, can I have a spoon, please? He brought a big soup spoon. And I said, don't you have a smaller spoon than this? And he goes, you want a smaller spoon? And I said, yes, please. And he goes, oh, for you, I'll go get one. And so he brought me a small spoon. It was not normal. They do not bring out these small spoons ever. And I got a small spoon.
It's part of the culture, they're trained into it. So the energy of the Algarve is known as an energetic bed of excellence. So things there are really charged, like you brought stuff out of the cave, like 2 bits of green netting that held the rocks and the stick that I used for weights, which is on the...
That one.
Yeah, in the Rosicrucian cosmography. And my jandals, I think it was, sandals. And you took them to your house and it busted your electrics.
It fried everything. I had to get a whole new electrical system, 3,800 euros. It cost me. It fried the entire system. I was washing dishes and I got zapped so bad that it split my thumb wide open.
Really?
I put pictures on Facebook with that. Yeah, just standing there running the water, all of a sudden zap, 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 sparks were coming off of the running water.
Yeah. Well, I was living in the cave for 100 out of 123 days.
You'd be charged.
Yeah, absolutely charged,
Yeah.
So, do you want to move on to the Lahaina fires?
Okay, well, we can do a separate video on that one. We'll go into that one, but just let's finish on the charging, actually, because that's what was experienced here. As soon as I got back to Portugal, I went to the cave. Well, when you know it, all the electricals started to go. My phones were not working. The computer wasn't working. I would go to the store and the till wouldn't work for me. I went to the registration. That didn't work for me. And then I go to the Estoy Palace where I couldn't register in. When I'm getting the tour with the manager, I look down and right against one of the stone carved benches with 2 gargoyles guarding, those are the 2 heads on each armrest. And in front of it was a dead bird, a pigeon. So I phoned you because I said to the manager, oh my gosh, is that a dead bird? And he goes, yeah, it is. And I said, I think that's a pigeon. He goes, yeah, I'll get that taken care of. 3 days it sat there for 3 days. Yeah. And then finally it was removed on the 3rd day. So more significance with that. But I phoned you and I said, so what's the significance of a pigeon, a dead bird? And is that bad luck? And you said...
Pigeons represent the Rothschilds. It's the symbol of the Rothschilds. The gargoyles represent planets.
Wow. So it's dead in front of the planets, or the planets have taken care of the Rothschilds? What do you see that as? It was evenly placed right in between the 2 gargoyles, right at the foot. It could not have been any more this way or that way. It was so evenly placed. And the wings were down to its side. Its head was, off kilter, but it just looked very peaceful, and it was large. It was a big pigeon.
Well, the gargoyles represent the consciousness of the planets.
Excuse me. Okay.
Gargoyles represent the consciousness of the planet.
Mm-hmm.
So, what's in the stars?
Well, we're stardust after all.
Between 2 stars is a dead Rothschild, or Rothschild's kaput, right in the middle. So, stars are in alignment for that.
That's really exciting news. And I thought it was interesting that it stayed there for 3 days, because normally, that would have been taken care of right away. But why would it be left for 3 days? I arrived on the 25th, Friday, Saturday, so Sunday it was removed.
I don't know. No resurrection? Yeah, that. Good. So do you want to?
Okay, so that's it for this one. Let's go into a next video.
That's enough. That was 26 and a half minutes. So
Perfect.
you got your share.
Okay, sounds good.